John Dolph Armstrong moved to Pittsburgh 41 years ago. He's worked for both Westinghouse Electric Corporation and U.S. Steel. He's now retired and lives in Mount Lebanon with his wife Judy of 49 years. They have 2 adult children of Rebecca and Michael and 1 granddaughter. John is a Vietnam War veteran who has visited the memorial in Washington, D.C. many times. Each time for him has been an emotional experience. In 2013, he spent 2 days in Normandy, France, visiting the D-Day landing sites, something he had long hoped to do. Standing on the beaches, climbing through the fortifications, and walking through the American cemetery is an experience he will never forget. And he gave life to the stories of the incredible bravery that he had seen there and that he had grown up with. I introduce to you Dolph John Armstrong.
Good morning. It's a privilege to be here. Memorial Day holds special meaning for me and has since I was a small child. It's interesting because I start my comments out very much the way Commander did, quoting from James Garfield, the former Union Army general, who said, "I am oppressed with a sense of impropriety of uttering words on this occasion. If silence is ever golden, it must be here beside the graves of 15,000 men whose lives were more significant than speech and whose death was a poem, the music of which can never be sung." I felt that golden silence when I stood overlooking the rows and rows of crosses dotted with stars of David in the American cemetery in Normandy, France. The silence was so overwhelming that you could hear the waves crashing on the beach below, the beach where so many lost their lives on D-Day 1944. I have felt that golden silence many times as I stood in front of the Vietnam Memorial and watched as people traced the names of the fallen with their fingers, as if out of the silence the names could speak to them. I believe that these lives and the lives of all who served our country are more significant than speech. And so I believe that Memorial Day is a day to honor all of our fallen brothers and sisters in arms, no matter how they died or when they died, and no matter where they lie. Honoring them does not diminish those who died in combat. The course of my life was shaped by war. My beliefs about honor, courage, valor, sacrifice, and heroism are largely the product of World War II and Vietnam. I was born on August 20th, 1944. The headline of the New York Times on that day read, "Our tanks smash into suburbs of Paris." I was 5 days old when Paris was liberated by the 4th Infantry Division. My mother called me her furlough baby, and my first home was base housing at Wright-Patterson Field in Dayton, Ohio, where my father, Master Sergeant Gandalf John Viviano, was stationed during World War II. On August 12, 1947, 8 days before my 3rd birthday, Sergeant Viviano died of a service-connected disability and was buried with full military honors. My 27-year-old mother became a war widow, and my sister, brother, and I became war orphans, terms applied to us by the Veterans Administration. 2 years later, my mother remarried and began a new life. I never knew my birth father, and my mother rarely talked about him. What do you tell a 3-year-old after you've told him the angels came and took Daddy to heaven? Because I didn't know how Dad died, in my child's mind, shaped by heroic stories of World War II veterans, I imagined he died from wounds suffered in battle. I made up imaginary scenarios. When I was older and learned that he had died of cancer, my bubble burst. My hero vanished. And when friends would ask me how my father died, I'd lie and tell them I didn't know. I was too embarrassed. I was a foolish child. but the discovery did trigger a lifelong quest to find out what kind of man my father was. According to my mother, Dad died because he ignored a lump that had been growing in his thigh since infantry training in 1943. Army doctors believe it was caused by injections he received, always in the same spot, to treat pneumonia, which he caught twice while on maneuvers. After Japan surrendered in August 15, 1945, Dad finally went on sick call. By then it was too late. The cancer had spread, and he died despite having his leg amputated at Walter Reed Army Hospital. I don't understand why Dad ignored the lump in his thigh for so long. Did he think it would go away on its own, or was he too busy doing important war work, or both? My father was drafted on December 7, 1942, 1 year to the day after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He was assigned to the 397th Infantry Regiment, but in April 1943, because he had extensive training and experience in aircraft engines before the war, he was transferred to the Army Air Force. His new job was to help ensure that B-17, B-24, and B-29 bombers had the most reliable engines possible. Dad must have been very good at his job because he was rapidly promoted to Master Sergeant. Dad also had a more challenging job. He was part of a top-secret program to modify B-29 bombers to carry atomic bombs. Called Silver Plate, it was part of the Manhattan Project. Dad specifically worked on the fuel injection system that replaced the carburetors on the B-29 engine. Colonel Paul Tibbets, who piloted the Enola Gay over Hiroshima, had demanded that all the B-29s in his group have fuel injection. In November 1944, Dad had been given full authority to travel as many times as necessary between Curtiss-Wright headquarters in Paterson, New Jersey, and 2 B-29 manufacturing sites to address change in design problems they were having with the fuel injection for those engines. Around that same time, he must have received orders transferring him to another unit. It never happened. In a memo dated 20 December 1944 and headlined, "Indispensable Enlisted Personnel," Dad's commanding officer wrote, "Master Sergeant Viviano's background is such that he is more valuable to the war effort in his present assignment," and added, "Due to the high priority of the B-29 program using Wright engines, it is felt that a transfer of Master Sergeant Viviano at this time would considerably affect the efficiency of this unit." In August 1945, the man who wrote that memo, Major Burt McNamara, headed a mission to Tinian Island in the Pacific to supervise engine maintenance on the special B-29 Super Fortress group assigned to drop the first atomic bomb on Japan. Regardless of how you feel about the use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, military leaders at the time were convinced that the bombing saved 250,000 or more American lives. Japanese soldiers fought to the death and inflicted heavy casualties on American troops during the island campaigns. And the end of the war was a great relief to the thousands of men training to invade the Japanese homeland. While it would not be considered conspicuous gallantry, I believe that my father died because he was focused on doing a job that helped save the lives of countless others. To me, that makes him, and many like him working behind the lines, heroes. On November 10, 1967, 20 years after my father died, and 23 years after the 4th Infantry Division came ashore at Utah Beach, fought through the hedgerows of France, and liberated Paris in World War II, I joined the division in Vietnam as a combat engineer. In the year that followed, I served as a demolition specialist and a squad leader. I participated in 5 combat campaigns, and I received an accelerated promotion to sergeant. I spent 9 months of my tour in the field, either sweeping roads for landmines, using explosives to clear mountaintops for forward fire bases, or going on patrols with the infantry deep into the triple canopy jungle of the Central Highlands. We carried rucksacks weighing upward of 60 pounds, plus weapons and ammunition. I had the added weight of at least 10 pounds of C4 plastic explosives. We ate sea rations heated by burning small pieces of C4. At night, we slept in tents made of ponchos and took turns on guard duty crouched in foxholes we dug on the perimeter. You were lucky if you got 4 hours of sleep. We were always dirty, covered with red dust during the dry season, or soaked to the skin during the monsoons. My squad once went 47 days between showers and a change of fatigues. And we slept closer to our locked and loaded M16 rifles than newlyweds on their honeymoon. And while my experiences in Vietnam pale in comparison to some of my brothers in arms, I spent a lot of time at the tip of the spear, and I learned a lot about leadership and people and fear and courage. Courage was on display every day. Walking point along an enemy jungle path, sweeping a road for landmines, helicopter combat assaults, clearing an LZ with explosives during a firefight, flying a helicopter through a small hole in the jungle canopy to pick up the wounded. But this is what the Army expected. It was the call of duty. These men who did the dirty work of war are my heroes. They were sons of farmers and blue-collar workers. They were butchers, mechanics, hairdressers, loggers, truck drivers, and high school dropouts. Some were unemployed. Some were told to enlist or go to jail. They were young Hispanics and African Americans who were expected to answer the call of duty of a country that regularly discriminated against them. These men did their jobs and did them well, and I am honored to have served with them. Some came home, some did not. They served our country in an unpopular war, and 58,318 of them made the ultimate sacrifice. They deserve our gratitude and respect. In August 1997, 50 years after my father died, I was told that I had prostate cancer. My first thought echoed the words of Paul Reutershan, a former helicopter crew chief who in 1978 announced on the Today Show, "I died in Vietnam, but I didn't even know it." He succumbed to pancreatic cancer a few months later. Like Paul and hundreds of others, I was a victim of Agent Orange, a defoliant ironically used to save American lives by denying the enemy coverage. The parallel between my father's death from metastatic synovial sarcoma and my stage 3B prostate cancer is not lost on me. I know how lucky I am. It's important to me, therefore, to dedicate this Memorial Day to Vietnam veterans who have suffered and died from exposure to Agent Orange, to veterans suffering and dying from Gulf War syndrome, to the men and women dying from exposure to burning toxic waste pits in Afghanistan and Iraq, to the men and women who came home so damaged by their combat experiences that they became addicts and alcoholics, destroyed their families, and took their own lives. The suicide rate for veterans is 1.5 times the rate for non-veterans. There is no Purple Heart for these men and women, no medal for courage, no name on a memorial. Today, as we honor the conspicuous gallantry of John Duran Kelly, the MIAs, the men and women killed in action in all of America's wars, and those who served our country and now are gone, let us also honor those who died in war and didn't even know it. Men and women whose lives were more significant than speech, whose death was a poem, the music of which can never be sung. I salute them.